I love Iron Maiden just like you do, and there are plenty of songs that they play a lot, that you hear a lot, The Trooper, Number of the Beast, Run to the Hills. But what are some underrated songs that you don't hear as much and you don't hear as much about? Now, if you're an Iron Maiden superfan like me, you'll love their entire library of songs. But here are the top 10 most underrated Iron Maiden tracks from their first album to the very last one, Senjutsu, and hopefully something more after that. Coming up at number 10, we have a song off the Power Slave album, and that is Back in the Village. Yes, that whole album is filled with just classic tracks. Aces High, 2 Minutes to Midnight, Power Slave, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. But sandwiched in between those tracks, you kind of have a bit of an underrated period for the album. And I know that Power Slave is a lot of people's favorite album, but Back in the Village, they haven't played it live, if at all. And it's just a kind of hard rockin' track. The subject matter is pretty deep. It's another song based on The Prisoner. And it's just kind of a kick-ass song through and through. It's got a great guitar riff. Bruce is wailing at his best on this track. And it leads right into Power Slave, and depending on the version that you own, the version that I own, the remastered, I think from 1998, they messed up and they put the Power Slave intro at the end of it. So you even get the end of the Power Slave intro if you're listening to it like I do. But Back in the Village, just an underrated track that a lot of people don't talk about because it's on Power Slave. And why would you talk about Back in the Village when you can talk about Aces High and 2 Minutes to Midnight? So if you haven't listened to Back in the Village in a while, give that one a check out because it is a fantastic Iron Maiden song from that sort of perfect era of the band's height. Number 9, speaking of the band's height, we have their second height. We have the reunion album. We have Out of the Silent Planet. Out of the Silent Planet, it comes from Brave New World, which is a lot of people's favorite reunion era Iron Maiden album. It's not my favorite reunion era album. There's some great tracks on that album, but Out of the Silent Planet really kind of sticks out for me as just sort of this. It's at the end of the album. It's the second to last track, so it's not that end of album closer epic feel track that they have. It kind of leads into that though, and the guitar riff on this one just really, from the start to the finish of it, just gets you going. And it's not really structured like the normal reunion era Iron Maiden album or Iron Maiden track. It's kind of a bit of a different composition, and it's just one of those tracks that, you listen to Brave New World, you listen to Wicker Man, you listen to Ghost of the Navigator, which I think is another underrated track, by the way. And that album, it feels like it all kind of mixes together after a certain point to me. But Out of the Silent Planet, it kicks out of that, and it goes right into some hard rocking guitars from the Three Amigos, and it doesn't get much better than this from the reunion era. Number 8, we have a track from what I consider to be the most underrated Iron Maiden album that they have ever made. We have These Colors Don't Run from A Matter of Life and Death. And that album, it feels like a lot of people forget about as well because they did play the whole thing live on that tour, and I know some Iron Maiden fans out there didn't really appreciate that they played an entire album in its entirety and didn't get to the classics or the deep cuts that they want to hear. But These Colors Don't Run, it feels like a quintessential Iron Maiden track. It feels like it's about, going off to war. It's about sort of the UK, the British Empire almost, and sending soldiers out and bringing them home and saying that, you got to go fight for your country if you have to. These colors don't run. And that track, it just feels so powerful. And I'm surprised they haven't brought it back out because it is a very powerful track. The chorus kicks out just a whole hell of a lot of ass, and it feels like a song that they should have brought back by now live that they haven't. And if you listen to this whole album, it's one of the songs that really sticks out for me. Track number 7, we're going to go to the Blaze Bayley era, and I know that's a bad word or a bad phrase for a lot of you out there because, Blaze Bayley sucks, he ruined Iron Maiden. I don't think so. I love the 2 Blaze Bayley albums, and we're going to get to Lightning Strikes Twice off of Virtual 11. That album, it's not my favorite Blaze Bayley album. That would be the X Factor. But Virtual 11, it has this sort of thing going with all the tracks where they all kind of follow the same pattern where they're all about 6 minutes long besides Future Real and they kind of, and the Klansmen, but they all kind of feel the same at a certain point. But Lightning Strikes Twice, it's such a strange sounding Iron Maiden chorus. It's also a horrifically difficult one. I've tried singing it in the car to myself, and It felt like it could have used a little bit of help from background singers. Adrian Smith is obviously the best background singer on in Iron Maiden. He wasn't here when they recorded it, so that might have something to do with it. But it just puts a lot of tension on Blaze Bayley's vocals on the chorus, and when you listen to him sing it live, especially when he's with Iron Maiden, it's straining to him. But the song itself is so good. It's just such a weird subject matter of just these things where it feels like it's something that's like ethereal almost, but then it's also talking about this stuff that is very physical, and it's a feeling, it's all of that. It's a strange song, but I love this song. They're probably never going to bring it out, so you're going to have to see Blaze Bayley sing it. But Lightning Strikes Twice, an excellent, excellent Blaze Bayley era track. Number 6, we're going to go to the X Factor, because I love that album. I gave that album a very high review. It's one of my favorite Iron Maiden albums ever. And if you don't like that, sorry. You can check out my review of it right here of the X Factor from Iron Maiden-a-thon. But we have Blood on the World's Hands. And this was a difficult choice to try to find a track from this album that I felt like was underrated, because the whole album is underrated. And I wanted to pick Sign of the Cross, but then I know people would be complaining, oh, they played that song live. Oh, it's the most famous song from the Blaze Bayley era besides The Klansman. Whatever. So I went with Blood on the World's Hands because it does feel like a precursor to the reunion era songwriting, the reunion era songs that we get when Blaze Bayley left the band. And you have these longer, more intricate, darker subject matter songs, and what's darker than Blood on the World's Hands? And it just goes through this whole evolution of the reunion era where, the songs are just more intricate, they're more deep. And this is a very deep and intricately written song, and it's a very fantastic vocal performance from Blaze Bayley as well, because you get the whole range of his voice, and his voice is not the same as Bruce Dickinson's, but goddamn, the guy can belt, and he does belt on this track on Blood on the World's Hands. So if I always tell people this, if you don't like the Blaze Bayley albums, give it another try. They take a while to get into, but once you get into them and you get around the fact that it's not Bruce Dickinson Iron Maiden, you'll be in for a treat, because they do sort of show you what's to come, and also the era that they're in, where Iron Maiden was in this dark place. Everyone in the band was in this dark place, and that's what this album came out of. And so if you don't like the album, please give it a listen, give it a re-listen. You might like it more than you did before. Track 5, we have The Red and the Black off of The Book of Souls. The Book of Souls, another sort of album that doesn't get as much talked about. They did play this one live on the Book of Souls World Tour, which was sick to see, but it really should fit into that epic category, that Steve Harris written epic of just 11 minutes of just heavy metal, in your face, prog metal, all of it wrapped into one that you get with those classic Steve Harris tracks like the 3 off of Senjutsu at the end of the album. And The Red and the Black, it has this weird feeling. It feels like it's talking about Alice in Wonderland or like a storybook or something like that, of just battles and everything going on. It feels like a very different Iron Maiden track, and for that reason, I love it. It's one of the best songs off of the Book of Souls. I was happy to see them play it live. It feels like one that they could bust out again, but they're obviously playing some of the longer length Senjutsu songs on the current tour that they're on, the Future Past tour. Maybe on a future tour we'll get The Red and the Black once again, but this track, if you haven't listened to it, in a while, it really kicks a whole hell of a lot of ass. You can't get much better than The Red and the Black with Iron Maiden. Number 4, we have a Di'Anno era track, and like a lot of you out there, this video actually started off as me saying, what Iron Maiden tracks would I say are overrated, and the only one I could think of was Wrathchild. So for all the old heads out there that want to complain that I don't like Killers, I do like Killers, I just don't like Wrathchild. It feels like a waste of a song when they play it live. But number 4, we have Purgatory, because Purgatory feels like the encapsulation of the Di'Anno era of Iron Maiden. I know Phantom of the Opera feels a lot like that as well, but even that track, I think Bruce does it better. Iron Maiden, the actual song, Di'Anno does it better, but it feels like Purgatory is like the culmination of that era of the band, and it's just that punk rock, even though they'll never admit it, punk rock influence on Iron Maiden that you get with Iron Maiden and Killers, that I know why people love the albums because of that, but Purgatory, it combines that sort of Thin Lizzy guitar with the punk rock of Paul Di'Anno, where he still hits the high notes and everything. It's just this Iron Maiden song that coalesces and is the band at that era and the peak of their powers on that track. And obviously they haven't played that track live in forever. They didn't play it on the tour where they played all the Di'Anno era songs up to Number of the Beast with Bruce Dickinson. I think they actually went up to Peace of Mind for that tour. But still, those first couple albums, they did it on that tour. They didn't play this track, and probably never going to get it live ever again. But Purgatory, just a fantastic Iron Maiden track. All of these songs, if you're making an Iron Maiden playlist for somebody, you got to put the classics on there, obviously, but you got to fit some of these other tracks in there to get them really a deeper appreciation of what Iron Maiden is all about. Number 3, we have the most popular track that I'm going to put on here because it feels like this song should have been a bigger hit, and that is Heaven Can Wait off of Somewhere in Time. Somewhere in Time is my favorite Iron Maiden album. Heaven Can Wait is, depending on the day, my favorite Iron Maiden track. And it's just crazy that they don't play this track every show. Like, this isn't just like the Fear of the Dark of that era for the band, because it's got everything that you would want out of it. It's got the crowd participation when they're doing the oh, and everybody's jumping up and down and going friggin' crazy, or when they used to bring the fan club members on stage to sing with them. It just feels like the perfect encapsulation of that era of Iron Maiden, where you put together Somewhere in Time and Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. It's that perfect blend of the guitar synthesizers with the heavy metal, with Bruce's voice at the peak of its powers, and all of that you get with Heaven Can Wait. It just feels like this should have been a bigger song. It feels like it should be their number 1 hit. It feels like something like that, and yet it doesn't get that sort of reputation. It's just kind of this fun song off of Somewhere in Time that they're busting out now for the first time since the Somewhere Back in Time World Tour. Heaven Can Wait, it's my alarm clock. It's what I wake up to every morning. I love it, so this is a bit of bias, but it's my list, not yours. So go figure. Heaven Can Wait, awesome, underrated Iron Maiden track. Number 2, we're heading back to the A Matter of Life and Death album for The Legacy. And Hell on Earth is the most topical, the most sort of poignant Iron Maiden has ever been off of the Senjutsu album. I'm pretty sure a lot of fans out there know that's not an underrated track at this point. It's an amazing just work of art from Steve Harris, but The Legacy feels very much in that similar vein of, it's about World War I, sending boys off to go to war and getting, mustard gassed and PTSD, but it feels very, very relevant in this day and age of just divisiveness and hatred and jaded people and a loss of hope and just despair in the world. And The Legacy feels a lot kind of like that with these demagogual figures that we have in the world. And it closes out the album. And it closes out the album on that note. And it finishes that album, which is such a dark and dreary sounding album, but not so much so like the X Factor, but it kicks off and goes right back into where it starts, and it's like a loop. You can listen to A Matter of Life and Death on a loop. It's not a concept album, but goddamn it feels like one. And The Legacy closes out that concept with just Iron Maiden at their heaviest that they've ever been. And I know people are going to say, oh, well, what about Die With Your Boots On and stuff like that? That's heavy, but Iron Maiden on A Matter of Life and Death is just heavy as hell in subject matter and guitars and music and everything. It feels like just a weighty album, and The Legacy is a big part of that. Number 1, if you've watched through Iron Maiden-a-thon, you're going to know what number 1 is from my most underrated Iron Maiden track. That is Judas Be My Guide off of Fear of the Dark. I have no clue how they didn't make this a lead single, how they haven't played this track live, how they haven't done t-shirts with stuff about this on it. It feels like in some other universe, Judas Be My Guide is a huge track for Iron Maiden, and in our universe, our dimension, whatever, it's just on Fear of the Dark. It's just kind of there. This feels like a track that should have been so much bigger than it was, and it's not. And it's crazy to me because it's so heavy. Bruce is singing so well. Maybe it was just the era that the song was released in. If you release it 5 years earlier, it's probably a huge hit. Who knows? I don't know. But Judas Be My Guide is just Iron Maiden perfection, because it's just a song. It goes in through. It feels like those tracks, those classic Iron Maiden galloping tracks of the singles, the Trooper, Run to the Hill, stuff like that. But a bit more of a subject matter change and a bit more of an evolution musically. And I know Fear of the Dark isn't everybody's favorite album, but there's some great tracks off that album. If we're going through underrated Iron Maiden albums, Fear of the Dark is up there with A Matter of Life and Death. And Judas Be My Guide leads the charge on that album being underrated as hell. So that's the list. What do you think is your most underrated Iron Maiden track? Am I completely wrong? Let me know in the comments. And also, if you like more Iron Maiden content, you can check out my entire Iron Maiden-a-thon review series here. I go through every album track by track. You can see my pandemic hair, and you can see what I think of the latest set lists that Iron Maiden puts out.